And one of those fine men, Col Mark Smith. This is a man whose reputation precedes him. The Nowackis are particularly fond of him. I heard so many good things about him. This is a man who is respected by so many of the Marines. Col Mark Smith.
One thing that video proved to me is inside every Marine is a hippie dying to get out. Denis and Sheila asked me to talk for 3 minutes. That's not going to happen. I'm going to warn you right now. And the reason that's not going to happen is not because I like to talk, but because I can't honor Andy in 3 minutes. So you're going to have to give me 3 times 3. But I'll try to get it done as quick as I can. First of all, let me say thank you to everyone for being here, and especially for your contributions to the cause, and let me thank Denis and Sheila for asking me to say a few words. It's been several years since I've been able to attend this gala in person, and as a result, and particularly as a result of the course of my life over those years, not the least of which a couple years ago was a very unexpected cancer diagnosis, I've come to even more profoundly understand, respect, admire, and love the Marines I served with in Iraq, especially those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for what they taught me and for what I was able to share with them. In order to explain this, I have to start with the obvious. This country is in dire straits and at a major crossroads. Which way we will go is unknown, but one way will lead to the sheer internal destruction, the other to return to glory. The problem in my mind is quite simple. In the public discourse, the key word, and more importantly, the key concept that is constantly missing in every discussion is the most important one, and that's honor. Honor is simply thinking, acting, and living according to a set of defined principles. Our principles were set out clearly by our founding fathers, and to those principles they not only rose up and fought to the death against the greatest military might the world had ever assembled, but also against the odds that gave them no chance of winning. But belief in the principles of freedom, of liberty, of life lived without tyranny, and not at the heel of an unappointed elite and noble class. Yes, belief in those principles steeled them for the course of hellish proportions, and to which they pledged their fortunes, their lives, and their sacred honor. Honor was the backbone of the struggle and the hope for future success. I saw honor, I touched honor, I witnessed honor every day, every hour, every instance in the Marines of the battalion I commanded in Iraq. And I did it under daily situations of daily stress and combat that most cannot fathom. To illustrate my point, I'm going to do something that I don't often do, but bear with me while I tell you a very quick war story. Going into Iraq, 2nd Battalion, 24th Marines was bound and determined to change the way in which counterinsurgency was fought. And the reason was, as we started to do our deliberate planning, me and my staff and I, if there's any English teachers in here, at Camp Pendleton, we identified very quickly, understand I had a lot of police officers on my staff, of which I'm one, and I had a lot of very smart guys on my staff, of which I was not one. But we figured out very quickly, through some very smart guys, that the enemy's center of gravity was the fact that he hid in plain sight. He was one of the people you saw every day, and you didn't know who your enemy was because he didn't wear a uniform, which made his critical vulnerability identification. Because we had a simple saying, all we needed to know was who you were and where you lived. Because once we knew that, it was game on for us, game over for you. But in order to do that, we were going to have to break the standard procedure of operating from a large base and pushing out and coming back. We knew we were going to have to take our combat forces and push them into the population centers. Let them live in and among and earn the respect of the Iraqi people, who would point out to them who the terrorists were, and then it would be game on for us and game over for them. Now, one of the Marines mentioned in that video, they weren't infantry. Well, let me tell you, we couldn't have done our strategy had it not been for the Marines of Truck Company, who were out there every single day pushing the supplies and the things we needed in order to execute our strategy. And they were engaged with the enemy every bit as much as the infantrymen. So we truly were one battalion. We were one team and we were one fight. Cool. Now, one of my companies was in an area called Yusufia. The people in Yusufia, the Karguli tribe, were hook and ladder connected to Osama bin Laden. These were some of the most evil people on the planet, and it was the absolute heart of the Iraqi insurgency. And as a result, that company was engaged multiple times a day, every single day, for 90 days. At the end of the 90 days, not to be crude, but the tally at that point was 2 of my Marines dead, over 500 of the enemy. So at that point, it was a pretty one-sided battle. And they had decided they had had enough, and they tapped out until 2 days before Christmas. 2 days before Christmas 2004, in a market that hadn't been open in a year and a half due to the tyranny that had taken place in that area. That market had reopened because of the Marines living in and among the Iraqi people and earning their respect. And while that market was bustling on a very sunny and hot day, and while one of my dismounted squads was patrolling through there, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device was detonated. Dozens of Iraqi citizens instantly killed. 2 of my Marines down. And I want to quickly tell you the story of one of them. And we'll just call him Brent, and we'll leave it at that. But physically, he was one of the most toughest men God had ever put on this planet. And when the corpsman got to him to do his assessment, and God bless Doc, I got a former Vietnam corpsman sitting at my table. When the corpsman got to him, he realized he had a small entrance wound on the right side of his body that had missed his SAPI plate. So being an exceptional corpsman, he rolled him onto his side to check for an exit wound. He had an exit wound going out his back the size of a softball. So the moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, is he had sustained a non-survivable wound. Now in the chaos that ensued, that squad did exactly what they were trained to do. They established a cordon. They detained some people that were high suspects of having been the trigger man. He would tell me later, sir, the only reason I knew to take his helmet off was I didn't want him to die with that uncomfortable helmet on, and I wanted him to feel the warmth of the sun as he passed from this life to the next. Now I'm going to ask you for a second to be that 20-year-old Marine. And after the dust settles and your ears stop ringing and you realize you can't breathe because half of your lungs have been blown out of your back, and you look up at your fellow Marine that you've been in battle with for 90 days, some of the toughest men you've ever walked the planet with, and they're doing what I'm doing. They're crying and their eyes are filled with tears. He knew what was going. He knew he was passing from this life to the dead. And I ask you to put yourself in this situation. What would you do? Would you beg for your life? Would you try to make a deal with God? Well, let me tell you what he did. He comforted his fellow Marines. He told them as he laid there dying that he was okay. And that he was going to be okay. And then he asked him, just tell my mom and my dad and my fiance that I loved them, and that I did my best. And the medevac got there, and they put him on the helicopter, and he flew away, and he died on the way to the hospital. Now I ask you, put yourself in the position of those Marines, and you've got suspects that you just believe mass murdered dozens of Iraqi citizens and 2 of your best friends. What do you do? What do you do? Well, let me tell you what they did. They zip-tied them, they processed the scene, they put them on vehicles provided by truck company, and they sent them back to the pod to be adjudicated because they were American Marines and they lived by a code of honor, and due process was part of that honor. Now Andy's situation was no different, and his brothers did the same for him and responded in exactly the same honorable manner because they were U.S. Marines, and honor is the way they think, it is the way they act, and it is the way they live. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and prone to the same sufferings and failings of all human frailty. But in the toughest of moments, when honor or dishonor will set the course of human events for decades to come, I saw in every single instance the Marines of 224 and its attachments do the right thing, do the honorable thing, and I am a humbled man for it. But I'm a better man for it. And I know in my own personal struggle, And in my daily prayers, I ask for two things every day. Well, I ask for a lot of things, but I'm only going to tell you two. I ask for continue to be cancer-free because like all believers, I want to get to heaven, just not yet. And I pray that no matter what cross my Jesus gives me, that I will carry it in a way that never dishonors Him and never dishonors my Marines. Because I saw Him in them every day. And let me end this with an echo from history and for a word to the recipients of this incredible scholarship. For if we do not know our history, it is the predictor of our future. And failure to understand it will ensure the failure of the nation. Most Americans have no idea of American history, let alone how it is connected to world history. But the facts are this. Our understanding as a nation and belief in the democratic ideals can be traced directly to the Greek city-state of Athens. But like the Athenians, our founding fathers knew that tyranny would always seek to destroy and enslave freedom and to bring free citizens to be subjects and to heal. So they traced a recognition of the need to be militarily strong and to defend to the death honor of ideas. They traced that to the Laconian Spartans. And like Athens, had it not been for the Spartans and especially the suicidal but legendary stand of King Leonidas and his 300 at Thermopylae, the Greek city-states would have perished under the march of the Persian Xerxes, and democracy might have forever been perished from the face of the earth. 300 years later, a Nazarene would be born that would change the face of the earth and heaven forever. But his teachings could not spread, could not flourish, and could not continue if it were not for the principles of freedom and democracy. And to defend those principles is the most honorable calling a man can undertake. To give his life in their defense, the most honorable act. In dedication to King Leonidas and the brave 300 is a very simple monument that reads, "Go tell the Spartans, passerby, that here by Spartan law we lie." Honor of the highest order. Well, I can simply say and will here to you tonight, to this audience, based on what these two old and weary eyes have witnessed. Go tell of Andy Nowacki, passerby, that here by American honor he lied. This great experiment, and that is truly what it is, an ongoing experiment in the affairs of mankind. If this experiment called America is to succeed, men and women in positions of authority must be men and women of honor. And that is becoming more and more rare. It will completely disintegrate if those in the professions of public safety sacrifice honor. So to the recipients of Andy's scholarship here tonight, I can assure you, as a lifelong public safety servant, both in the U.S. military and in the realm of law enforcement, you will meet men and women of dishonor. You will be challenged on many occasions to dishonor your code and your oath. Do not you dare do it. You stand against political pressure. You stand against shortcuts. You stand against violation of due process, and at every instance, you execute your duties with honor, and solely based on the principles upon which you swear your oath, chief among them the U.S. Constitution. You do those regardless of the crosses that it may bring to bear, because to do anything less is to dishonor the men and women who came before and died with honor. You remember this night when you're challenged with those situations, and you remember the gift that was the life and death of one Lance Corporal Andy Nowacki and what he gave you in that scholarship. And in that moment of challenge, you remember, go tell of Andy Nowacki, passerby, that here, by American honor, he lied. God bless you all and thank you.
There it is. It's real, folks. I'm going to say it again. Freedom is not free. It's not free, and that's why we're so glad that you're here tonight to do exactly what he said, to help us give these recipients of these scholarships the opportunity to embody everything that is good and honorable and so needed in this world today.